O le vai asa muli le nei o le whanatanga lona lua se fultasi o le swing o le tau. Le o loo whaanga solo lava i te tonu, o le poche i pali wharani. Ma o loo whapea nauna mata i tuina le lei ai lava i atu motu la i te o le Pasifika. Se malienga o le a autasi i ai malo o te tele no laulangi, e pe o Amerika masaina. I le sao lava o le whaala apataptonga o le si o manga o le Pasifika po le SPREP. Na whaelo ai e le sunga le whaatonu o le SPREP le Pasifika, ia David Shepard, o lo awai mai i le nei whanatanga. Le awai i tae o atunu te telo laulangi o nā mana ia le leo le Pasifika. I le tūlanga o pa iei le a whianga o atu motu la i te Pasifika ono o le suinga o le tau. Sa ia whaelo foi, o lo tau lai atu motu le Pasifika i se malienga, e tusa lea ma le tasi te si ma le lima tikari, o le apa uma o la loa le tūlanga o kasa ono lo ngaosi, e nei atu nu o le laulangi. Ai a whai ai mai ai whulwhunatanga le nei e le au sia se malienga o se tūlanga whaano no tele. Ta o foia David, le whinanga lo wha alio le malo tu vanu, e tu sai lava ma le nei mata upu, e le o se mata upu tawa o onga, pe o le tamao a inga foi. Ai o le soi fua maola o tangato atu moto Pasifika, lea e matua i longa o na a fia, isu winga o le tau. E se whata tana noanga tale wei whanua ma le sui presidente o le whanetu pe le laulangi, i le vai o polo keti o swini no le tau. Sa whaelo ai e Radio Kite, le si TI o fisozoani le whanetu pe le laulangi, le lose fuluiva biliona e whaamatuina o le whaatinuina au. Ma o le amata e tuina le foi, le i awana i tele ai se fianga o atu motu. O le Pasifika mai ia polo keti, se o tātou mata i tuina pea, le tūlanga o le au oi nei whiautanga inga, ma nei whunatanga o lo whaatino i nei le teme nei. Ioana te pae mai le po shade I pale wharani. Ministers face a severe choice this week when they finally get their hands on the draft Paris Climate Agreement in Paris this week. On the table are two possible deals that they need to choose between. One that delivers a 3-degree world, condemning millions to suffer, and one that gives us a fighting chance to keep the climate safe. But for Pacific Island countries, especially the smaller island states like Tuvalu, Kiribati, and Marshall Islands, including Samoa, they have one dream, a legal binding agreement of 1.5 degrees.
Our leaders have been quite clear in declarations over the year that they want the strongest possible legally binding agreement from Paris, that they would like that to include limiting temperature rise to 1.5 above pre-industrial levels, and also that key issues of relevance to the Pacific countries and also SIDS such as adequate sustainable finance and loss and damage are included.
But what difference does it make whether it is 1.5 or 2 degrees? According to Shepard, there is a huge difference.
For example, coral reefs will suffer major stress at 1.5. At 2 degrees, there's a high likelihood of them dying completely. So in Pacific, Caribbean, we depend on the resources of the ocean, coral reefs, for our survival. The science tells us that from between 1.5 and 2 degrees, there is a major difference in terms of intensity and frequency of extreme weather events. Also in terms of the level of sea level rise. So these are key issues that threaten the very survival of small island states. That's why it's so important. And that's why the scientists who advise this process, the UNFCCC COP process, have said that it has to be 1.5 or less. So countries ignore the science at the peril of those countries that are most vulnerable.
Yet it will be quite disappointing if big countries like China and the United States do not come into an agreement or an accord, as it is not a matter of an academic or an economic issue, but one of survival.
Well, that would be very disappointing. We had a press conference today with the leaders of Tuvalu, Palau and Cook Islands, and they said that this is not an academic or an economic issue, it's a matter of survival. And the countries that are 2 meters above sea level, like Tuvalu, Kiribati, Public Marshall Islands, the failure to reach agreement means that the survival is severely at risk.
Taliban Fanua also had the chance to interview the Vice President of World Bank, specifically on climate change. Rachel Kite says that the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, have already pledged in by a third or 28% increase of funds, which is about $29 billion a year by 2020, and over superficially for climate change projects that they have to monitor. But what they have to monitor when these projects are likely to be climate change resilient. According to her, whether they have any impact on the lives of people and the environment.
The decisions made here will have a personal impact on the Pacific Island nations, but let's wait and see if the world leaders do take into consideration what the Pacific Island nations had asked. Brianna SPREP reporting from Paris, France.
A o whaanga solo i pēr whanutanga ma whiutanga inga i le whanutanga whaavau mālo le nei ni swing o le tau I pale wharani. Na maule hawano e tale wi whanua I whailoa I mwhaatata noa fo I se taisi tu mai tai mai sa moe a Brianna SPREP. Se tasi fo I o loo whai masui o tupulanga mai nei whanutanga e wha leo lo lato fo I manatu e tu sai ma le autu o le nei whanutanga. Ta ua e Brianna lo na nganga whiawhia ai mai se whaaftai o no wa maule hawano e whai malanga mai I pale wharani e awaile nei whanutanga. Sa ia whaelo foi o se tasile nei whanutanga tau o tele, lo o tele na tau la I aile whaai o tele o atunu o Pasifika o nei te tau o na Ausia. Ai se malianga le vau atunu o te tele lanlangi e pēle malo tele o Saina, whaapei ma Amerika, na ia tau whaai tia le ngaosi o kasa o ona, e whaale ngai naile o soni, ai whaapei ai fwere si o manga, ona o lea ua mai tau wina, le tele o le aafianga I le tele o atunu o Pasifika. Whaelo fo e Brianna a whai ai mai ele nei whanutanga I le mawhai lava I nei atunuu o na ausia se manianga o se whaanonoanga tele ai le tu ua I pea le ngaluenga o lo ia whaatino o le tau longolongo le tai o atunuu mo le laulangi I atunuu mo le laulangi le tūlanga o ala tonga I oinga o lo whaapena o na awhia I atu motu o le Pasifika. I por kalame whaalauloa le nei tamai tai sa I o tufutufu I nātu ai foi I so o se tangata lo whaapena o na awai I le whanutanga ia sei e whailea ma se whailonga e whaalauloa ailo lato langlong sua I atu motu langaiti o le Pasifika lo oa a fia tele I suinga o le tau. Brianna SPREP mai pale wharani. As meetings and negotiations continue at the 21st session of COP21, one of the main debates on the agenda is on what is the safest temperature level the world can stand, whether it is 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees.
Brianna SPREP is a 16-year-old girl who had the chance to travel to Le Pochet, Paris, France, to take part in the COP21 conference. Brianna SPREP has been involved in a lot of environmentalist programs, advocating the message to Pacific Island nations that they need to protect and preserve the environment. Talevi Fanua caught up with her and had this interview.
What I've been doing is trying to showcase, all the great work that's been happening in Samoa, the work that our National Youth Council, SNYC, does, the work that our Ministry of Youth and Women do. I've been trying to showcase that as much as possible so that people know that, in developing countries and in small island states, we're not just victims to climate change, but we're also, climate warriors and we're willing to fight climate change.
There were many young people who have come together to ensure their voices are heard by leaders of the world in making sure that COP21 in Paris bears fruit.
1.5. We might still be alive. Rich countries, do your fair share. Rich countries, do your fair share. Climate justice. Climate justice. Climate justice.
But what if China and the United States are not able to commit and as a result, a legally binding agreement is not attained? The young environmentalist is optimistic that regardless of those concerns, a solution can be reached.
My wish for this conference is that there's a legally binding agreement that comes out of it, strong enough so that, the survival of our islands is concrete. But if not, life will go on, things will still go on. Me as a youth representative, I'll still continue to fight the fight.
This week, Brianna will also have the chance to participate in a youth conference for climate change that will be held at the COP21 conference venue.
SPREP is one international organization that is encouraging people attending the COP21 conference to wear say as a way to show their support for Pacific Island nations, as Pacific Island nations are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Brianna SPREP reporting from Paris, France.